Hello, my name is Taylor Rose, and we are going to talk about some fresh off the press book community drama while I put on my face. So, if you know me in my personal life, you are probably well aware that I have not been on social media pretty much since the beginning of the year. I was finding it really stressful to read people's bad takes on things and deleted everything. Deleted my Facebook, deleted my Instagram. I even deleted Reddit. I was not really in the headspace to be taking in all this content. But I've been feeling better lately and decided to dip my toes back in, and I started with Threads, mainly because I wanted to get more in touch with the book community. Previously, I've kind of only watched rant reviews for certain series, and so I felt like I missed out a lot on things that are going on in general. But today, when I opened Threads, my interest was immediately piqued by this post. Can someone please tell me who this author who hates dogs is so I can be sure never to add her books to my TBR? I don't know about you, but that feels pretty spicy, pretty fast to me. I mean, I really connect to the next half of her statement, right? I mean, when I first started the Throne of Glass series, the dog's fate was one of my main concerns. I do not wish to read dog death, just for the hell of it. Me too, girl. Me too. Daria Zioli. I had watched the Quiet Place movies, I think the original and then the sequel, when the prequel came out, and obviously, immediately, there's a cat in the trailer. I'm a cat owner. Clearly I like cats. And I had to Google spoilers to make sure that if I watched the movie, I would not have to see anything happen to the cat. I remember watching a movie in college, and it did not have any warnings about a cat being killed. And that scene has stuck with me for years. I mean, it's been a decade since I was in college. Someone updated her and directed her to this author who hates dogs. And we can see that it is someone named Erin Lee posting on the Indie Authors thread group. Full disclosure, I've never heard of her. I mean, she's posting on an Indie Authors group. She's probably not that well known at this point in time, and I think from now it's going to be well known for something that is not very nice. So her post says, I killed a dog in my book and said there's no afterlife. Okay. Not really a problem there off the bat. You know, everyone is entitled to their own religious beliefs regarding death and the afterlife. That's not the issue. She immediately follows up with, then I watched a writing video that said pets can have big roles in books, so to be careful. Is that supposed to be surprising to her? Clearly, the dog is playing a big enough role to be killed off in her book. But she's acting like that's not important. Like it's a surprise. You need to treat that content carefully. Like you should be careful with any depiction of death or, you know, any sort of trauma in your writing. You know, like if you can't deal with that subject matter respectfully, you probably shouldn't be writing it. That's my hot take. And she continues. And a beta reader asked me if a dog dies and said she checks a site with a list of books to avoid. Me too, girl. Me too. Then a dating app guy said, my afterlife rule was a hard pass and dipped. Again, everyone is entitled to their own religious beliefs. It is not a requirement for some people, but for other people, it is really important that their partner share in their belief system. So clearly that was, a deal breaker for him. He's entitled to that. And she's somehow turning this around on people loving their pets. Damn people, dog culture is dire. They're a great pet, but stop acting like they have little moons orbiting them. Your behavior is raising our vet bills. They're not a child. Ignoring the fact that plenty of people can't have children, don't want children, or, otherwise don't have them in their life. Arguably, in my opinion, cats and dogs are essentially children to the majority of people, especially, I'm speaking for America, but especially in the United States, how many people have working dogs? I'm going to bet that's a really low number. Right off the bat, what can you think of? Hunting dogs, police dogs, drug sniffer dogs, the dogs at TSA, guide dogs, emotional support dogs. I'll look up how many of those exist in America compared to how many animals. And you just let me know if the only reason we have pets is because they're doing labor for us. The answer is going to be no. At the end of the day, arguably, pets do fill a child role for the majority of people who own them. They cannot provide for themselves. They need enrichment. You need to train to educate them on correct behaviors, but somehow they're not children. They don't fill any sort of adjacent role for the majority of people. Clearly they do. And I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody who has friends with pets. I'm saying this as not even a dog person. I had childhood dogs, but I am now firmly a cat owner. Erin's follow-up to the backlash is this fantastic comment. I said I think dogs are good pets, but they're not children, and let pets be pets. And then I said, keep things simple, and suddenly I'm Satan. You chose to ridicule people for having boundaries about the content they want to consume and are acting like everyone else's opinion is trash for not agreeing with you. Okay. People have a frantic need to make a villain, and it's disturbing. Secondly, I write dark psychological fiction. A lot of people and a dog die in my book. It's about death. Don't read it if it's not for you. That's okay. I write honest stories. I feel like this is just a bad take. I write about traumatic things, therefore, I'm talking about real life. Do I think life's amazing and perfect all the time? No, it's definitely not. Lots of bad things happen to lots of good people. But I think what makes this even worse is that she is supposedly a dark psychological fiction author. There's a reason that, at least in recent times, that genre comes with trigger warnings. There are some things that people can't deal with in their media, and that's totally fine. Victims of trauma don't need to re-victimize themselves because you're too stubborn to let people know what negative content is in your book. And what is the harm in including a trigger warning? If someone doesn't want to be spoiled, so to speak, they are more than welcome to skip the trigger warning. It's there for the people that need it, the people that want it. And as an author writing in a, I don't want to say questionable, but delicate genre, it is your, I think, ethical responsibility to provide that for your audience. Some of the best responses that I found I thought were pretty funny. MBR Sky 11 says, girl, just be so for real. Stop pretending that people took issue with a dog's death in your book. We don't care. You're obviously entitled to offing whoever whatever you want in your own book. What we took issue with is how you belittled your beta readers and swaths of dog owners for simply loving their dogs like children, and then claimed it increases vet bills. Yeah, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Everyone is entitled to their own religious beliefs. And even if you don't agree with them, going to the internet to talk to an audience that is made up largely of people in the same area, right? Who's going to be in the book community? People who read and review books, people who recommend them to their friends, other people. And you bust in on the scene basically saying, I think it's stupid if you don't like my books for XYZ reasons. Okay. That's cool. This next response, Jess Dark reads. So I'm assuming based off her name that she enjoys reading dark psychological fiction. Your dogs aren't your kids, chill is a wild way to get mad at readers when they don't want to read about pet loss in books. My dogs have defended me from DV and attempted home invasions, so no, I don't want to read your book about a dog dying with attitude like that. Authors make hard decisions when writing books, but it should be done with care, empathy, and compassion for their readers. The rage bait got me. This is exactly how I feel about, I know people talked about it a lot several years ago, but fridging, right? I'm sure you've heard of it. It's when a male main character loses a female counterpart, usually his wife, maybe a child, mother or sister, to death of some kind. The term fridging comes specifically from a television show where the wife, who has not been introduced to any extent, really, does not have a standalone character of her own, is immediately introduced dead in a fridge, and he finds her, right? And I think in general, people are becoming more aware of what that kind of representation does and are speaking out against it, which I enjoy. I'm beginning to think that this Erin Lee woman is really just trying to rage bait people. True North Tropicals says, I don't need to read about pet loss. In my 55 years, I've held 4 dogs in my arms as they left this world. I've seen the following posted on several platforms. Don't know where it originated, but it hits for me. When I die, make sure I'm buried with my running shoes tied tight and a leash in my hand. I have a few good boys and girls to take on walks again. And let me tear up a little. I don't fault people for having positive associations to their childhood pets, especially when you're a child. What else is there? Either have really good memories of your dog or your cat or your guinea pig because you were a child and nothing bad ever happened to you or them, or something bad did happen and you live with that sadness for the rest of your life. So to immediately come online and try to act justified in making fun of people for having these feelings is pretty wild, in my opinion. Phoenix J. Ramos says, girl, you are absolutely missing the point. He is. People aren't mad because a dog dies in your book. People are mad because you came at people for having emotions about their dogs. And she did. That's true. We co-evolved with these creatures for 30,000 years. They've been our partners since before writing. People will have strong feelings. They shaped us as much as we shaped them. If you can't see the simple psychology here, I have doubts about your ability to write dark psychological fiction. Dang, hot take, but I'm there for it. So I do watch a lot of rant reviews about dark romance. And even the ones who are including this content for the shock factor still have trigger warnings, whether it's on their website or in the book itself or on the Amazon listing. You know, it's warning people about what they'll find, even if they don't approach that content with the respect that it deserves. Mary Still Writes says, Erin, take a step back and a deep breath, I beg of you. What's your end goal here? Is this worth it? Your post lacked empathy and you were digging your heels in while refusing to accept any accountability is throwing away all the time, money, and energy you spent trying to launch a career that is now destroyed. Instead of acknowledging that your opinion was hurtful to a large portion of your fan base and instead doubling down is a choice. Tunder Holmes says, you are not great at selling books, but you are great at getting yourself ratioed. I laughed. And Ren Author has a really good point. And I think this is people's biggest issue. Clearly, given how Erin is talking about this subject to begin with, there's no ambiguity towards how she probably treated that death in her book. Ren Author says, famous books like Marley and Me, Art of Racing in the Rain, A Dog's Purpose, all had dogs dying in them, and still got publicity because the story of the dog was meaningful and full of heart. They showed the importance of a dog's life in our own lives. A famous part of Marley and Me was that their family started with Marley. It was heartfelt and real even then, and a lot to read. Killing animals in stories should be done with precision and care, not just for a plot device. Alea Gets Lost Sometimes responded, exactly this. Those are all extremely good books, and the death of the animal is devastating but written with so much care and love. It shows the life of the animal was still meaningful and important. She adds that Where the Red Fern Grows and Old Yeller fall to this category. I was traumatized by Where the Red Fern Grows as a kid. My grandma, I had to read the book for school or something, and I was telling her how horrible it was, so she made me watch the movie. And I just remember crying in her living room. But it's like, still, all of these stories still treat the dog as a full character with importance, with a meaningful place in the narrative. They're not just there as something to torture for the sake of being edgy and dark. This next response, I think, brings up a big pet peeve of mine. Kay Griffith says, so in case y'all were wondering how to get canceled and ensure your books never get picked up at a store, here you go. Disrespecting people's boundaries and personal religious views of the afterlife, as well as possible triggers, is a hard pass. For you to belittle your readers like this is appalling. Do better. Will not be reading anything by Erin Lee, can tell you that much. And this person who, they have a Mario profile picture, I'm sure they're real proud of the statements they're putting out on the internet, says it's fiction. Obviously, that makes it worse. She's choosing to include this content in her work. Tay did follow up and say, but her dismissing her beta readers and acting like they're wrong for asking for content and trigger warnings isn't. My statement remains the same. Yep. You know, when I was a teenager, I did think trigger warnings were pretty dumb. They were spoiling the story, in my wrong opinion back then. And then, you know, I went out, got some life experience, and realized that I was being naive. And there are plenty of things that I don't have the bandwidth to consume at any given point. My husband multiple times has tried to put on Saving Private Ryan. Can't do it. I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. Meanwhile, plenty of people have absolutely no issue consuming that movie. I'm sure plenty of people have no issue watching animals die. And maybe I'm biased because I am vegetarian. Excusing media for its problematic aspects simply because it's fiction is, in my opinion, inexcusable. A lot of people will defend poorly written shows for the same reason. It's fiction, it's not real. Okay, but I'm allowed to have critical thought. The whole point in me watching this show or this movie is to escape from real life. And you're going to tell me that it doesn't matter that there are these aspects that would just integrally pull the majority of viewers straight out of the story is fine. It's not a big deal. Nobody cares. That's the whole point of, in my opinion, creating media. You want people to believe it. You want people to be immersed. You should want to know, hey, X aspect of this doesn't make sense, and this is probably a better explanation for what's going on. Or you want to know, hey, this topic is problematic for these reasons. Here's a better way to approach that topic. I'm glad that the majority of comments I saw responding to this person, this author, were trying to inform her why she was wrong. Well, those are pretty much all my thoughts on this particular moment of drama. Like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on my 100K in 100 days writing challenge that I'm currently undertaking. And I will see you in the next one.